Once a month or so, we invite Dr. David McKenzie to Studio 4 to offer advice on love, sex, partnerships, and on studies about such things. Dr. McKenzie is a theologian and a family counselor and sex therapist. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. David McKenzie back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you. And apparently, there's such a thing as holy sex. I know there's a thing such as no sex,
Yeah.
but holy sex, really?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Douglas Todd wrote an article, I think it was a week ago, about 4 young women who claim to be virgins and are actually promoting this in their lifestyle and are looking for the right husbands for themselves. And it's a phenomenon that I think maybe we even touched on in past interviews. But it's a very interesting thing that's going on, mainly grasped by more fundamentalist evangelical churches.
Abstinence.
Abstinence, yeah. I mean, there are some positive things I want to say about it. One thing is that it teaches young people about self-respect and respect for others. It teaches them about the consequences of their behavior. But there are also some negative and downsides to it. And I even read one article in which 5-year-old girls are taking these vows with their fathers. They go to daddy little girl dances and they take these vows. The problem with that is that when you put it into a child that early of taking a vow, if in fact they meet someone and they do have sex later on in their late teens, early 20s, there's this profound guilt that they have to suffer with, that they've broken a promise. And I really think it makes sex a much more shadowy event rather than the joy and the pleasure that is meant to give us.
One of the studies suggests that couples who don't have sex before marriage are happier and more stable. Now, how they figure that out, I don't know.
Yeah, actually, one of a young woman who did her thesis on this at the local university. In terms of reading the methodology, I found trouble with the methodology. It seemed to be slanted towards finding that result. The studies I have read and the literature that I have read said that there seems to be no correlation with whether you have sex before marriage or after. But the question becomes, is it premarital sex or pre-ceremonial sex? When does the marriage actually begin? Now, traditionally in Orthodox Christianity, in the early stages, a man took a woman for a wife, and it was later that the priest blessed it. For instance, in Lutheranism in Norway, 100 years ago, men would order mail-order brides. These brides would come, they would go up to these long fjords and work with their partners to do the farm. They would have sex, they would have children, they were loyal to each other, and about every 3 to 4 years, the local Lutheran pastor would come through these little villages and marry them long after they'd been with each other. So marriage is very fluid. My wife and I, for instance, said our vows to each other long before we stood in a church, which was for the public to see.
Right, so the commitment was there, all of that was there. I have a friend who was having a mature relationship, and she decided that she would marry this man, but not have sex with him until she married him. Well, the girlfriends went a little nuts. We said, what? You can't. Like, you have to, have a little fun before, because what if? What if it's just awful?
Well,
I know we would never have said that at 16, but at a certain age you say.
But sex changes. I mean, you can be with a hot lover in the first part, but then have sexual problems later. It takes a couple, an average of about 3 to 5 years to adjust sexually. So the idea that, you want to try them out to see if they fit, it just doesn't make sense from a marriage point of view.
Sure, and it should get better as you get to know each other and all of that.
It's a relationship.
Or maybe it gets worse.
Well,
you're a sex therapist.
But bad or worse, you work with each other. It's a relationship. My concern in this is that it puts a dark mood on sex, so that soon is kind of hearkening back to the days when virginity was this prize in which you present it to your husband. A lot of people don't understand the context in which that arose. For instance, when I was a priest and I would prepare couples for marriage, I would go through the marriage ceremony. And the marriage ceremonies changed, by the way, over the years. They no longer have towards your husband love and obey. They took that out.
Yes, thank goodness.
But that comes from a tradition where, daddy gives little girl away to husband. once they learn where that comes from, they're quite appalled, because the father owned his daughter, and when he passed the daughter in the wedding ceremony over to the husband, he passed over her inheritance, passed over her legal and monetary resources. The husband owned her, both legally and physically. Up till only 20 years ago, a man could rape his wife if he was married to her.
Well, and as you know, in some countries that is still going on.
Still the case.
Still the case.
Yeah.
But a vow of chastity in the early times, Victorian age, somebody, a woman would take a vow of chastity, or they had chastity belts, all of that. And I mean, if there are 4 Fraser Valley virgins who want good men and holy sex, it's okay.
Oh, I'm not against that.
Whatever flips your skirt.
Sure. No, if you want to save yourself in a particular Christian understanding of sex and marriage, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But to hold that up as the ideal, I think, is wrong-footed.
Right, or as a connection to marital contentment.
That's right, absolutely.
If I did or not.
Yeah.
That has something to do with happiness or stability or marital contentment?
I don't believe the literature supports that.
Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that.
Oh, good. I'm on your side this morning.
Okay, wonderful. Now, this time of year, slightly crazy, emotional, highly emotional. Even if you're not a Christian, there's something about the holidays and the celebration and the expectation.
People experience more loss around winter. I read an article in the paper a few years ago that, in fact, a study showed that there are more older people who die around the winter time and Christmas. So, I mean, in my own life, for instance, I've experienced 2 major losses at Christmas time. It's not a pleasant time of the year for me. The other issue is if you're alone and you've got everybody else is with family and so forth, and you have nobody nearby or have no one, the whole season emphasizes getting together, happiness. A lot of arguments
Norman
happened.
Rockwell did it on the cover of that Saturday Evening Post.
I think he's responsible.
I think he's responsible, but it's so true. You know, I drove by a Starbucks the other day, and it said, open December 25th.
Ah!
And I thought, good.
Yeah.
Because there are people who get up and there is nobody at home, and you're by yourself, and you've got your mini tree.
Yeah.
Or not.
But I mean, to show you, when I was a pastor years ago, I used to have a ceremony just before Christmas called Christmas When It Hurts. It was the last week of Advent. And that was profoundly attended. I mean, a lot of people came out to that. So Christmas is not an easy time for many people. My suggestion to those who are alone and they're thinking of having Christmas alone and they don't want that, you need to be proactive. For instance, when I was in the church, we had lots of invitations to New Year's Eve parties. Leaving the church, doing my doctorate, getting my own practice, we don't have many of those invitations.
No.
So my wife and I said, we're going to go out and we're going to find a place to go dancing and have dinner, and we do locally here every year.
Sure, and change tradition. This year we go for Chinese food.
Exactly.
Or we do something we haven't always done because all the kids are gone and we're free. So the kids are away, as you know. They're in New York. They're in the
But
Paris.
you need to be proactive and, you know, be a pain to people.
I get it.
Them. Yeah.
But what do you do? So now you say first year married, second year married, and you've got the family thing. And everybody has their own tradition. And he says, we open our presents on Christmas Eve, and she says, we don't. So, you know, how to find the middle.
Remember I said to you once, I think I said it, in marriage you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate.
Exactly.
So you talk about it and you negotiate. You negotiate everything. Most couples will end up having Christmas with one side and then next year Christmas with the other.
Right.
It's a tough job.
It sure is. And who's coming and who's not coming to the Christmas dinner, and then feelings are hurt, and then Grandpa gets drunk, and I'm telling you.
You had one of those in your family too?
Oh, we had a whole family of alcoholics. It makes Christmas even more exciting.
You must come from a Scottish family.
Well, a little Irish.
A lot
of the Irish. And, you know, they get drunk at Christmas.
Yeah.
What can I tell you?
Yeah, well, it runs in the genes.
And misbehave, and it's somehow, it is what it is. It's never dull.
I think people make Christmas or the holiday season what they need to make it. And I really believe in reaching out to friends and acquaintances to say, look, I'm going to be alone at Christmas. Could you invite me? Or there's nothing humiliating about that.
No, exactly. And when you're newly divorced and the kids decide to go with Dad, I've had a couple of those. Christmases where the kids just aren't there.
Yeah.
So you go to what we call Orphan Christmas, the gathering of people who are in your situation, and it works out just swell.
Right. Or find a friend to go on a trip to Mexico or something. You don't have to stay
that
here
sounds
if you can afford it.
Yeah. Now, and divorce at Christmas. Say you're like in a big mess at home, and you've decided to separate, but you're faking it. For the family, for the kids, maybe you haven't told the mom and dad, the parents, maybe no one knows, maybe they do know, haven't told the children, don't like each other, and you're pretending all's swell because it's Christmas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've dealt with couples just like that, and most people can pull that off. Most people can keep their own emotions in check. It's a very difficult thing you're proposing there.
Sure.
Usually people pick that up at a subliminal level. They know something's going on. But you can surely get through that 1 week of Christmas without becoming gorillas on each other. And,
surely.
And I think it's also important in terms of looking at the way you're relating to each other. I don't think any divorce has to be that miserable. And I think it takes two people to be adults and come together and say, look, we need help. We're in a lot of pain. We can't do this on our own. We need help to do this. The children don't deserve us to be gorillas on each other.
Right, exactly. But heightened expectations, and sometimes it goes back to, I don't know what it is about this time of year, but you remember what happened to you when you were 5, or when you were 10. And you got a doll from your aunt, and how wonderful that was. And I'm sure our Christmases were no better when we were 10 or 12 than they are when we're 50 plus.
Yes.
But we somehow have this selective memory.
But listen to the music.
The feeling, the
I know,
White Christmas, the Irving
exactly,
Berlin,
you know, I'll
the
be home
Nat
for
King
Christmas.
Cole.
Exactly. It draws us back to that. And it sets up this ideal of what family should be, whereas family is defined in many, many ways. You can have a single person who belongs to a family of his or her choice.
Right.
You can have people who belong to a big Italian family and they all have to get together. Family is defined in the way
Greeks.
you want to. Or the Greeks.
I know.
Yes.
But say you're just not that person and you're with somebody who is, and you don't know what to do and you don't know what to say, and he says, we always on Christmas Eve do this. And do you think it's okay in a couple to say, you know what, darling, you go do that, even though it's Christmas? Because there's a lot of pressure for us to be together, right? But it seems to me like any other time of year, you would say, okay, you go to the hockey game, I'll go to the dance.
I'll tell you, one of the things I enjoy about, I don't enjoy Christmas, I'm a humbug on it, and that comes from a long history of some of which I just referred to. But I know for my grandchildren and my kids, Christmas is important, so I pull it off with them, or try to, and I think we do a good job. But for the most part, I think Christmas is a time where many people just get through. And they make it work for them because other people are depending on it.
Right.
And Christmas is a time, I feel, when it's the one opportunity where family can gather together. Some people have family reunions in the summer. Kind of our family reunion is in the winter.
Sure, and take the pressure off the present thing. Just take the pressure off. Well, that's why American Thanksgiving is so popular in the USA. Because you don't have to do presents and all of that. And as I said to somebody else, having been raised in the States, if you don't show up for Thanksgiving, you're in big, big trouble. If you don't show up for Christmas, no one cares as much.
Well, I was just down in Texas for their Thanksgiving. I go every year now.
Well, you know.
Yeah, I know.
The Yanks, they do get carried away.
Yeah.
But
Thanksgiving's very important,
Well, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, season greetings.
Yeah, all
bah
those
humbug.
Yeah, happy Hanukkah, all those things.
Happy Hanukkah. And you can always go to the mission, to the gospel mission or something, and serve meals.
Yes,
which
my wife and I support that.
That's great
a great
to
organization.
Sure is.
Yeah. Thanks, Fanny.
Nice to see you. Dr. David McKenzie, he is a couples counselor and sex therapist. And remember, you can catch all of our conversations on YouTube or follow us on Twitter at Fanny Studio 4. Tomorrow, real estate experts Kinch and Campbell return to educate us on everything from mortgages to goodbyes south of the border. And we meet a principal ballerina who was with the American Ballet Theatre. She dances in Vancouver's Nutcracker and into our studio. And Barbara Jo from Books to Cooks brings in Christmas ideas for the gourmet in your life. Thanks for watching Studio 4. There will be lots more on Shaw TV, only on Shaw TV.